So the big question is this: how do you lose all the weight that you want and actually keep it off for the rest of your life, while trying to make sense of all the noise that comes from the weight loss industry? That is the question. And this podcast will give you the answers.
G'day everybody and welcome to the next episode in the Weight Loss Secrets podcast. My name is Baron Grant and I'm excited to be with you again today to talk about some tips and tricks and ideas that are going to help you to be able to lose all the weight you want and keep it off for the rest of your life. Now today's topic is going to be a controversial one, but before we get into it, I want to just start off by saying I've received lots of messages over the last day or so about my last episode, which is about the right types of food to eat, where I spoke about protein and veggies and fruit, and I gave some sort of indication about the right types of food. Well, I've had some messages basically saying, can you give me more info? What's the right type of food? And do you have some sort of a program or anything like that? Yes and yes. And so if you head to ditchingthediet.com, you can get access to my book where I uncover more secrets that big companies have been trying to keep hidden for years when it comes to weight loss. Because remember, the big companies, they don't want you to keep losing weight. They want you to lose it and gain it and lose it and gain it. So you keep trying their dumb products. But you can get hold of my book, and then there's a program on there as well that you can get access to where you get all the meal plans and structure and everything that you need to be able to lose weight. So I won't talk any more about that, but jump on ditchingthediet.com and you can get access to all that sort of stuff. But today, the topic that I want to bring up is really from a discussion that I had this morning. So I had a chat with a guy this morning when I was doing a personal training session with him, a friend of mine, and we were talking about his workplace. Now he works in residential, residential care with youth who have had some challenges in their lives and they're not living with their families anymore. And so he works in this in even more high risk environment. So these youth and kids are struggling heavily in their lives. They've come from terrible situations and it's really sad. Anyway, we talk stories about this sort of stuff all the time. And he started telling me a story which I found extremely disturbing, and it really highlights my concerns around the body positivity movement. Now, before I even tell this story, I want to be really clear that I think we should be positive and happy in our bodies. That is super, super important. So the title of this is the body positivity movement good or bad? Well, it's good and bad. But the concern I have is the almost celebration online in some particularly social media outlets of obesity. And then there's discussions around you should be happy to be obese, or you should be really happy in your body no matter your size. Now, there's a real fine balance here. You've got to be happy with who you are, but we can't ever look at being obese as being healthy. That's absurd. Because it's not. You can't be overweight and healthy. They don't operate independently. If you are overweight, you are unhealthy to a degree. Now, no one has perfect health. But what I'm saying is we can't celebrate that sort of stuff. And this next story really highlights one of the big concerns that I have, because it's not just affecting adults who can make whatever choices they want. It's these ideas that being obese is okay, and it's more about feeling really happy in your own skin, no matter what size you are. It's quite damaging for these young people. And so my friend continued to tell me this story about this young girl who's 12 years old in this high-risk type facility, and she is 130 kilos. 130 kilos at 12 years old. That is extremely overweight. And that poor young girl, it breaks my heart. I've got little kids, and that poor young girl will be broken for the rest of her life if she doesn't receive proper help. There's a therapeutic practitioner in this environment that doesn't allow the staff to be able to restrict this child's eating. They say if she's hungry, you must give her food, and as much as she wants, in as big a quantity as she wants. And this practitioner, I'll give in inverted commas, talks to this girl more about being happy in her image. She also goes to see a doctor who does that as well. Now, this facility, the people working in this facility have been trying to get this young girl a dietitian and a personal trainer. And they've been told by this practitioner that is damaging because that's sort of bordering on fat shaming and things like that. And so it's better for her just to talk about it and not make any real change to the way that she lives her life or the food that she's eating, because that's offensive and you shouldn't do that. It just blows my mind how damaging this is, because it's more important to talk about how she can be happy in her overweight body and make her feel like that is a positive thing and a lovely thing, as opposed to helping her to be healthy in her body. Now, the reason I get so passionate and frustrated by these, I'm thinking of a nice word to say, complete clowns, is probably the nicest word I can come up with, is because they are destroying this poor little girl. As a 12-year-old, she needs to be healthy, because if she doesn't make changes right now, she's going to be broken for the rest of her life and not be able to mentally cope with being overweight and all the confidence issues that come from that. And the reason I get so passionate about this is I've spent years helping particularly middle-aged women who are so sad about the way they look and so sad about their weight. Now, a lot of that does come down to media and unrealistic expectations, but whatever that expectation is, they're not happy. They're not happy with where they're at, and it makes me sad sometimes. I remember talking to a lady once, and she was in her mid-40s, and she said, "Baron, I don't have any mirrors in my house because I am so disgusted with what I see in the mirror, I cannot look at myself." Now, I was able to watch her make amazing changes in her life, which is super exciting. So she became healthy and lost a heap of weight and felt more comfortable in her skin. But I hate that people even feel like that. But this poor 12-year-old girl is set up for that type of thing later in her life, because she's getting really poor advice from people. It's not about shaming. It's not about making people feel like garbage. It's about helping them to see that it's better to be healthy, and people generally are happier when they're healthy. I've seen the hardest, toughest guys, break down to me about feeling so sad about where they're at from a health perspective and a weight perspective, but they never show that to anybody else because it's terribly embarrassing. And so I think we've got to be really careful from a body positivity movement that we don't act like being obese or overweight significantly is healthy. And we should be content with that, because we shouldn't, because it causes all sorts of health issues. So many of our health issues that we have come from obesity, stroke, heart attack. So much, you're at a way higher chance of having any of those issues in your body when you're overweight. So I think there is a balance. We do need to be positive about our bodies and be happy in who we are, but if we're overweight, we need to make change. We'll be happier if we do. And so we have to be honest with ourselves about that. And I'll give you an example where sometimes you've got to do some tough conversations. And some people listening to this might disagree with this approach, and that's okay. But I've got healthy kids. And so my son, I'm sure he won't mind me telling this story, he's older now. So when he was about 12 years old, he broke his leg. And in that journey, my son loves his food, right? But in that journey, he started to put on a fair bit of weight as he had a broken leg and was pretty immobile. And all I said to him, I pulled him aside and I said, "Hey, I just need to make sure that you don't go too hard on the food, bro. Put a little bit of weight on. Let's keep it in check right now." Rather than letting him get 20 kilos overweight, we just had a little conversation. He knows that I love him. He knows that he's supported. We're on the same team. It's not about shaming him. There's none of that. But it's okay to talk about it. And so we sat down and we had a chat. And he's like, yeah, okay, Dad, yeah, let's do it. And so we did it together. And we made sure we're eating really good food and moved a little bit more with what he could with a broken leg. And he kept his weight in check. Now, he's an athlete now, and he's in great shape and he's doing really well. But we've got to not be too scared to have those sort of conversations. And the culture that we find ourselves in now, it almost seems like it's almost impossible to have those conversations with people. And this poor friend of mine who can't even talk to this young girl about it, and the advice she's getting by these people, which is very poor advice, trying to help her to feel better in herself, but she won't, because she's so embarrassed. She won't even go to school. She's so embarrassed by the way that she looks, and these people are not helping her. So I want you to think about where you're at, where your friends are at. We're in a society that it's like these two extremes, where you've got people who are flaunting bodies that are fake, fake in the sense that they act like they're living normal lives, but they're not. They're training 5 or 6 hours a day and taking steroids, and that's why their bodies look so amazing. Versus you've got people now who are obese, very unhealthy and very overweight, and they're telling you that that's a great place to be. And so you've got these crazy either ends of the spectrum where we want to probably play is somewhere in the middle, be healthy and active and move, but don't be so stuck either way that you can't change. And if you're over this side where you're overweight, you've got to be careful to not think that it's okay to sit there and stay there, because health challenges will come and you won't be as happy as what you possibly can be. I actually I mentioned Jeremy on a couple of episodes ago. Jeremy lost 50 kilos in 27 weeks, did amazing. But the thing that I loved, he sent me a photo just after he finished losing the weight. He'd gone on a holiday, so he jumped on a plane, and he sent me a photo with space in the seatbelt. These little things, right? So he wasn't embarrassed getting on the plane this time. He got on the plane and he fit the seatbelt, and all these little things that people take for granted are super important when you've not been in that place before and it hasn't fit. So it's important to feel comfortable in who we are, but not so comfortable that we're not willing to make change to improve. That's my message today. My message is body positivity is important, but we cannot be overweight and healthy. Health is probably more important than body positivity, because with health, the body positivity will come because you'll feel more comfortable naturally because you're more healthy. So for me, it's not about anybody being a model. It's not about having the perfect physique. It's not about any of that sort of stuff, but it is about being healthy, and something that you can be, when you're healthy, you can be consistent and stay in that place and be happy with where you're at. From my experience of working with thousands of people to help them lose weight, my experience is that the people who have lost the weight and are at a healthy place are much happier than when they started. Because I see them at the start of the journey. I see them when they're pretty broken emotionally. They don't want to look at themselves in the mirror. They don't feel comfortable taking their clothes off in front of their spouse. They feel totally embarrassed. And then at the end, man, I could tell you some stories about people and the changes that they've made and how amazing they feel because they had the courage to jump in, make some change, and then at the end, they feel so much more confident, so much happier, so much content in life. They put their clothes on and they feel comfortable. We can convince ourselves that being overweight is healthy and try to convince ourselves of that, but we'll never actually feel it because it's not. But once we get to where we want to be and stay in that place roughly, then we'll be able to feel much more comfortable with where we're at. Body positivity is important, but not at the expense of health. So get out there, get healthy, get moving. You guys got this. All the best. We'll talk soon.